Hello everyone, it is me, Puy, and I apologize for the delay, but it is high time we talk about the Grand Puy, my predictions, and how things shook out in the end. We'll be looking at the top 8 decks from the event today, but for starters, I want to say thank you so much for everyone who pulled up. We ended up with 44 players, including many wonderful names such as DontCopy, AJT, BLS, Ivan Rosito, Dueling High 101, Gia76, Madcap, Splevin, Grace, Drundle, Rabid, Anthony Alvarado, and so many others. It really was a stacked event with a lot of cool techs coming out into play, and the top 8 looks awesome. A lot of it lines up with some of my predictions, and some of it was surprising in some good ways and some bad ways. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start talking about my predictions a little bit and see how they line up. So, prediction number 1 that didn't shake out exactly as I was hoping. I thought Turbo would be mid. I thought Chaos Turbo would be mid, and this wasn't just a speculation, but the result of me doing some testing. Of course, I wasn't exactly creative about how I went about that testing. I just took out 2 Spy, replaced it with 1 Guard, put in a 3rd Chaos Sorcerer for the BLS, took out the Ring, put in 3 Solemns, and was like, yeah, I'm guessing this is just kind of a control deck. And that control deck that resulted was a little bit aimless, so to speak. You kind of just kept drawing cards, but you weren't going anywhere. And the 3rd upstart was really good, obviously. The deck definitely moved, and I definitely win some games. I knew it would still be a playable deck and a good deck, but when I was playing it was like, what are we drawing towards? And why are we giving our opponent 3,000 life to do so? However, we must first start talking about DontCopy's deck for the event, the winner, and this was a deck he played. Now, some things definitely stick out here, for sure. For starters, in lieu of a lot of the tech that Turbo ended up developing over the years, especially utilizing Dust Shoot and its OTK power with Ring and BLS kind of taken away. It kind of looks a lot like the Ricklar list from 2020 Worlds, or was it? Yeah, 2020 Worlds. And it's also playing a Cyberjar, which is like awesome. I'm pretty sure, if I can look again, maybe one of two, it's the only Cyberjar deck that ended up making in the top and it won. Without Ring and BLS, it's kind of hard for a lot of decks to kill you off of a Cyberjar, even if they flip it on their own turn in the middle of the battle phase or something. So that ended up panning out quite well, and it's quite exciting. I think that playing Cyberjar in a fair deck is always really exciting. We're playing two Book of Moon, and we're also only playing 2 Solemn instead of 3, which I actually, looking back, is a really good choice. There's a lot of things Book of Moon can do that a Solemn can do, and a lot of things Gravekeeper Break can do that a Solemn can do, and they do them without cutting your life in half, which is a pretty big deal. The sideboard is a bunch of beaters for specific kinds of matchups. Most notably, there's Wang Hu, since you don't really have to worry about it non-bowing with your Spy. Tomato can be set, and then if it's destroyed, you get Sangan, it's a free search. So Wang Hu's really not bad in Turbo in general, but especially here, it's extra good. Kaiku, obviously, I'm guessing he's expecting the mirror. Copy specifically was really saying Turbo was going to still be broken. And I will say, throughout these events, and throughout the gameplay we saw that absolutely Thunder Dragon Graceful Charity continued to be a very overpowered opening that drove a lot of good players to victory and a lot of good players who didn't get that to lose. We will definitely be looking at Thunder Dragon's status at 3 in the future, I'm guessing, or something similar to that to alleviate that issue. We're not letting this engine just sit, but we'll get more to that in a bit. The 3 Mind Control, I think, was also very, very promising. People predicted, because of the Abyss Soldier, that people would not be setting Sangan and Serpent as much because they can't risk them getting knocked. So it was more likely the sets would be good, even without Spy, right? If you're not playing Spy and you're playing Mind Control, you don't have to worry about not getting value off that Mind Control. So most of the time, if you used a Mind Control against a Turbo deck, it would probably hit something good, which is like a really, really good call. Here's the extra Solemn. He's got 3 Saku. Now, something you'll see as well is Warrior did not make the top 8. In fact, no traditional aggro deck made the top 8. One of my other predictions was that Warrior, as we imagined it, would just be completely unplayable. If you wanted to play Warrior, I thought that it would need to main 3 Wang Hu, or be closer to sort of to the older anti-meta Warriors, and no one really ended up doing that, at least no one who converted. What we did get was something I also predicted would be good, which was skill drained zombies piloted by none other than Crops, aka Beast Beats, aka the Mad Texan. I just made up that nickname, it's total bullshit, but a lot of people were gravitating towards zombies because Vampire Lord went to 3. And that wasn't the reason you were supposed to. The reason you were supposed to is because Skill Drain is cracked. Without Ring of Destruction, getting to play 3 Skill Drain and 3 Solemn Judgment is absolutely absurd. So you get to see this deck where it's no longer being stopped by Spy, so it kind of hammers against, like, it kind of hammers on most control decks and just plows right through them with the amount of its trap lineup without ever really being punished by another burn card. There's no ring. So this deck really takes great advantage of how the list changes. Congratulations to Crops for running it so far. I know Shaunar did something similar, but something list like this seems really, really good. And I think that in this current ban list that we have, if someone were to play Skill Drain Zombies again, I think this is a solid tier 1 deck for the current meta we have. The sideboard is really good. Reaper's a fantastic tool against Reasoning Gate, which we ended up seeing. You have the Cylinder for the aggro matchups, which is also really good because, again, people are assuming that Solemn Judgment is going to be everywhere. So if you get to burn someone out, it's pretty easy to do. That is something we saw, I think, not once, but twice on stream, which was absolutely awesome. A lot of the more standard players are here in this side as well, and just everything about this deck is kind of better because Spy isn't around as much. Third place, we have Raven's Anger. This is the other turbo, quote-unquote, deck that ended up topping. But if you look at this deck, it's goddamn crazy. This is Raven's Anger is one other than one James Hames of the Atlanta GOAT format scene. He also topped the same GGP. I did GGP Atlanta with a similar deck. This man packs the spice into his turbo deck. That is a main board Ashura in the top corner. That is a main board Zaborg in the bottom left corner. That is a main board Reaper, single tomato, single assailant. He's playing a brain control, which goes really good with the Thunder Dragons in addition to the Zaborg, and also just makes killing easier. He did not go up a third Sork, which I find really super interesting. But if you look at it, this is a deck that, in very subtle ways, managed to find its own kill power without needing Ring and BLS. So I think it's pretty clear how he got his success in the tournament today. This sideboard's pretty standard, but again, we see the Tomato engine, even in the smallest form, being the most efficient way to replace Spy. So that's definitely something we'll have to look out for in the future. Moving on to number 4, the spice begins with something not so spicy, but a good desktop nonetheless. We have Flashy, again, with Reasoning Gate. He just recently got really, really close to a top in the GFC, which was really impressive, and he's back again. This deck performed in ways I could not possibly expect it. He's on a style that I'd say is pretty old school, something also that Zogler was using in the FLC. I think he topped that as well, where you're really trying to grind out, and it's really about getting a Sork in the graveyard with your Reasoning or Gate, and getting a Crane in the graveyard because they called for, and like doing your Defu combos. But this deck, most impressively, can grind like a mother. The extent to which he was grinding and winning games that we thought were completely unwinnable, it was crazy. His games went longer than any others. I think a little bit of that was slow playing, so keep an eye on that, Flashy. But we did see him go to last card in a match against, I think, 5th place, and he ended up drawing it out to the very end because he had a premature we forgot about, and we were like counting the outs in his deck. We were like, how is he possibly going to do this? And he took it out right on stream, which is amazing. Very notably, this deck does not seem to be too badly hampered by the hit on Trunade because it has its ability to grind. He replaced it with a Mystical Space Typhoon and 1 copy of Royal Decree. Of course, the deck still plays Jinzo, which is a tool as well. So if you can just keep yourself from dying long enough, that does the job plenty, apparently. He's got a Cyberjar on the side, which is a fun tech that Matt Uber, I think, pioneered. And the side looks pretty standard besides that. So moving on, we have the beginning of course, the next prediction. Not even a prediction, much as just the known reality of the situation. Abyss Soldier's crazy in this format. I'm surprised that none made it up higher in the top, but I think that the people above this player were expecting it and played accordingly. Abyss Soldier went absolutely crazy all day. Specifically, the Tom Abyss engine you see here. You've got the 2 Tomato, the Sangan, a Reaper to go with them, and also that searches Abyss Soldier. And now you have free Abyss Loops. It's playing Prima where a deck like this otherwise would not. And you've had the Prima Abyss Loops. Those go absolutely crazy. He's got the Kaiku, and he's got the Sork, which are all good to Prima as well as even the Tomato is pretty good. So this is just a chaos control deck that really takes advantage of the whale in the biggest way. It's something we were definitely expecting to see. We have more Karibos on the side. In addition, James Hames had them as well. Definitely respecting the OTK decks, which clearly was necessary, as you can see. But this was definitely a deck people predicted to be quite good, and indeed it was. Mainboard bottomless is wild, but when you think about it, with the Abyss Soldier everywhere, it makes perfect sense. Especially even all of these decks here, you see extra beaters they are playing more. You can hit an Ashura, a Zaborg, a Tribute Summon Thunder Dragon, your Sorks, your Lady. In this deck, most of the big zombies can get hit if they're not summoned in damage step. Even DontCopy's deck. No, that's a lie. But yeah, Bottomless was actually a really decent card to test in the main. 2 is kind of wild, but it worked. He made a top. Moving on, though, to those who thought, to those who complained, to those who griped that limiting Gravekeeper Spy would hurt the Gravekeeper archetype, I present to you JJ Stokes with Gravekeeper, all spells, no traps control, okay, making the top 8. I don't even know what to say about this. When you look at it, it makes perfect sense. You've got the one of Royal Tribute over here in the corner just to make a massive fuck you to everyone. But just looking at this deck, it's like, yeah, this is really strong. You have a lot of good ways to make Zaborg and make sure it lands on the field. You're not affected by Decree if that's what people are trying to do. You've got the book for protection. You can plow through opponents' goats pretty well. You hate on Turbo with the Necro Valley and on Faith as well. So this is awesome. I love this deck a lot, and I think that more variations of this could also be quite good in the future. Then we have further spice here. Getting even spicier, we've got Rabbit's deck, I believe also created with LaBounty's help. This is Ice Spice Walk Stein. The amount of times I've listed the top 8 to folks, and they've been like, what the hell is Ice Spice Walk Stein? And of course they are, because what the hell's going on here? The spice is anti-spell fragrance, and then the ice is Mobius. So you make them set their spell cards, and then you destroy them, and they're just screwed. This is like a crazy trap-heavy aggro deck, also making advantage of the whale, which is great with the ice and the spice as well in the same way. Playing one of return to make sure it closes out the game. This deck is absolutely awesome. Then going into the side, it's doing something completely different. The walks are, of course, good burn hate, but if you get rid of something big enough to have 10,000 life points, your Stein now can summon 2 monsters, which can be 2 Master of Oz or a Balter and a Senshi if you just want to, play the answer in one can. It also triggers Last Will, which means you only have to play 2 Stein and you can get them pretty easily. But this deck is absolutely sweet as well. And then lastly, we have my dear favorite, the Blue Turbo, piloted by Scrub for Life. The deck was already playing 3 Sork. No BLS hurts a lot, but it just was replaced with more beaters. He's playing a 4th discard trap since we can't play Dust Shoot. It works really well. This was something that Gangster Bro was theorizing. I just thought Dust Shoot was better, in standard goats, but for modified goats, obviously, a 4th discard trap's pretty nasty. He is also maining Skill Dark Magician. This was another predicted good beater. Most people were predicting, except for maybe Skill Drain Zombies, that Skill Dark Magician would be the best beater because, of course, it's bigger than Kaiku. It is bigger than the Abyss Soldier. Most of the time, it'll hit over Blade Knight or most warriors. In defense mode, it'll also defend from recruiters, from other Manjus and Senjus, from most of the aggressive bodies in other turbo decks, such as Breaker, Virus. Obviously, it is smaller than the Whale in defense, but the 1700 is no joke. It's also Sook-proof. So, with that, I'd say it's a really cool top 8. I think a lot of people have had a lot of, let's say, interesting thoughts, feelings, and opinions about where this format is and where it's going to go, but I feel like this is a really cool top 8. Don't you? Like, when was the last time you saw a top 8 with this wildly different stuff? Now, some people may think that it's going to become even more turbo-centric, and that's perfectly possible, but a lot of these decks have a good turbo matchup, and turbo is definitely having its playing field leveled. DontCopy is also a really good player, and this was certainly not the goal to make good players suddenly unable to win. So where does the format go from here is the big question people are asking, and honestly, I can't give you a good answer yet, and I'm sorry for that to be the case. I was only really trying to get this thing jump-started. I am now talking with staff, and staff are in constant discussion about how we're going to take this and how we're going to proceed, how ban lists will be changed, and what order events will be, what the structure for prizing will be, whether or not it can be a part of the standard GOAT circuit, or it'll be its own circuit, or all these things are still in discussion. But I can say for certain that there will be further GOAT format Fridays playing this format with this current list, and that eventually we will have a system devised by which we will decide on the next list. So, keep on playing, keep on brewing. I think there's plenty more to be explored in this format as is, as you can see with all of these wonderful topping decks. So thank you so much again for coming out. Thank you so much again for 1,000 subscribers. Congratulations to all these players, and especially DontCopy. And then finally, I have to give the biggest thank you to JDZ, but even more than JDZ, Grumpelstiltskin. Oh my god, dude. You were on the stream with me for 9 hours at the Porco Dio hours, going absolutely delirious, holding up everything for me, and I cannot thank you enough. But for the rest of you, happy modified goating, and I hope you have a lovely day.